The New York City subway is the best way to get around. Now, try again. It's been a while. Is this a working Metro card? Is this? I'll just go in the old-fashioned way. I'll take a cab. Cab is the best way to get around.
Of course, that's not really Hillary Clinton. It's Kate McKinnon from last night's Saturday Night Live, but it signals that we're turning to our political roundtable for some analysis. We welcome Jennifer Jacobs, who's moved from the political fields of Iowa and the Des Moines Register to join the team at Bloomberg News here in Washington. Jamelle Bouie writes for Slate Magazine and is a CBS News political analyst. Dan Balz is chief correspondent for the Washington Post. And Ramesh Ponnuru is a senior editor for the National Review. Dan, I want to start with you. What's the state of play in the Democratic contest?
Well, the state of play is this, that Bernie Sanders has momentum and Hillary Clinton has mathematics. And right now, momentum is prevailing, at least in the narrative of the campaign. And so there's a lot of focus on, A, how is Sanders able to continue to, in a sense, perform better than anybody expected? I mean, he's run a remarkable campaign by any measure. And yet the hard math of the delegates continues to be in Clinton's favor. New York is very important to her. It begins a period in which she will be able, she hopes, by the end of this month, to be able to basically say there is no way he can become the nominee, and in a sense give her a kind of a permission slip, not simply to compete for the final delegates in the nomination, but to turn her attention a bit to the general election.
To finally make that pivot.
Right.
Jennifer, I was talking to somebody this week and said, you know, unless Bernie Sanders forces a major shift in the campaign, that there's really, even if he continues doing well, he's just not going to be able to do well enough. Is that right?
Bernie Sanders is just running out of real estate. And just the fact that, you know, she tied him in delegates in Wyoming, even though he won, is just, it demonstrates how rough this road is going to be for him. And she's done that repeatedly. There have been many states where they tied or he beat her, and then she got almost as many delegates, or if not more. So it's going to be a rough road for him. And it just seems like she is the presumptive nominee unless there's a major game changer.
And Jamelle, this week it got a little contentious. Bernie Sanders said she wasn't qualified. There was a lot of back and forth on that. It seemed maybe like they're both just ragged and tired from this process. But where do you get the sense of things? I mean, are there starting to be irrevocable things said in this contest? Have they stepped back from the hottest part of this race?
I mean, I think they're attempting to step back. In your interview with Senator Sanders, he sort of kind of went on the unqualified road for a little bit, but then caught himself and said, but of course, I think she would be a fine president of the United States if she were the nominee. I think it's worth noting, right, that in 2008, around this time, something like half of Clinton supporters said they wouldn't vote for Obama in the general. So even though things seem contentious and sharp right now, once we get to the convention, regardless of who the nominee, I think the Democratic Party is going to pretty quickly unify. Just sensing an ability to hold on to the White House and win quite a bit more seats in both chambers of Congress that I don't think anyone imagined was possible 6 months ago. And so that fact that winning is really on the table here in a big way, I think it's going to be the force that really pushes everyone to unify.
Mm-hmm. How happy would Reince Priebus be if the worst thing Republicans were saying about each other is that they're not qualified? I mean, we keep talking about how contentious this debate on the Democratic side is, but it's really almost comically restrained in the context of what's going on in 2016. What you have not seen from Sanders is an attack on Clinton on the basis that she's not honest and trustworthy, which is this line of attack that would potentially be fruitful because there are only a minority of Americans who believe that she's honest and trustworthy, but one that would give the Republicans something serious they could use in a general election. So far, he hasn't done that.
Yeah, that's right. Dan, do you think it would, in terms of Bernie Sanders, did he sort of step by talking about qualifications? He's had a good run. Did he give a gift to the Clinton campaign by talking about that? It seemed to get him off track this week.
Well, I do. I think it hurt him in this way. He had a big victory in Wisconsin. He headed into a 2-week period ahead of the New York primary with some wind at his back, and yet all of a sudden he got caught up in a debate that did him no favors. And I think that a lot of Democrats believe that he lost that week, a week that he needed to keep the momentum going. So I think it was a misstep on his part. In a sense, he kind of took the bait from the Clinton campaign and escalated beyond what it needed to be. And I was struck again in the interview that he did with you that he can't quite let go of it. He knows he ought to. They seemed to pivot out of it late last week, and yet again today he's kind of repeating some of the same lines. So I don't think it was helpful, and he's got to kind of regain the momentum that he had a week ago.
Jennifer, does it matter that that Bernie Sanders had a bad interview on the specifics with the New York Daily News to his voters?
Yeah, I think it did. Actually, one Democrat pointed out to me that it seems like Bernie Sanders is earning more Pinocchios from the Washington Post fact checkers these days than he's earning delegates. And the thing about, she said, quote unquote, that I'm, unqualified was one of the things where he was fact checked as false. And there have been several other things.
She didn't actually say that.
She did not actually say he is not qualified. And there have been other things that, he has been fact checked on lately that, are permeating into that, into the consciousness, and people are realizing that he doesn't always get his facts exactly right.
I'm a conservative, but I want to defend the socialist here. And I think there have been a lot of cheap shots about that Daily News interview. When Senator Sanders says we're going to put a cap on the size of the banks and it'll be up to them to figure out how they meet that cap, that's a totally legitimate answer. That's the way a cap on bank size would work. And it's just silly for people to say, oh, well, why isn't he actually spelling out in detail what they're going to have to do?
Right. I'm gonna agree there. Like, if you reading that interview, Sanders has a clear idea of the kinds of policies he would want to pursue. He knows that laws like Dodd-Frank give the White House quite a bit of authority in determining how to pursue bank regulation. The fact that he can't give you chapter and verse, I think, is less important than the fact that he does have a broad sense of what his administration would do to approach these questions.
And what he's got that has been effective is he has a diagnosis of what he thinks the problems in the country are, and the basis from which that occurs, and a set of policies that are designed out of that diagnosis. She has a different one. She has a series of answers for specific problems, but that's a different thing than the theory of the case, and I think it's one of the reasons his message has been more succinct and therefore probably more effective than hers. What she's got is, everything that the Clintons bring to the table.
His campaign is on fire. If he had been this strong before the Iowa caucuses that early on, he would be the nominee now.
But there's another aspect to this, which is what nobody quite likes to talk about, and that's the superdelegates. I mean, we know she has a big lead in superdelegates. They have more superdelegates than they have announced. I mean, they have in the neighborhood of 600 superdelegates pledged to them, many of whom are not prepared to publicly say that yet. If he doesn't have a majority of pledged delegates, there's no way those superdelegates are going to switch.
Are going to switch over, which is his theory. Okay, let's hold it there. We'll get back to the Republicans, but for right now, we're going to just take a little break. Stay with us.